So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again. In this video, I'm going to show you how I stored 3 of my recreational kayaks up completely out of the way in my garage using nothing but a couple ratchet straps and 2 old bed frames that we no longer had any use for. So they do make a pulley system that you can buy to store your kayaks in a very similar fashion. The only benefit to doing it with these ratchet straps like this is you can tuck them much closer to the ceiling. So even if you only have an 8-foot ceiling in your garage, these kayaks aren't usually more than 18 inches thick, so it still allows you enough room to walk underneath them when they're stored in your garage. So in the past, I actually anchored my 2 other kayaks in a very similar manner. However, instead of using something like a bed rail, I just anchored some eye bolts directly into the studs in the ceiling. However, that wasn't really an option for this one because the studs were running the opposite way and I couldn't get the eye bolts where I needed them for these 3 smaller kayaks. And that's why I decided to use these angle irons so I could anchor those to the studs and then drill my holes to hold the ratchet straps where I needed them in that angle iron. So I will put an icon at the end of this video if you want to check that out, and that is the video of me anchoring with just the eye bolts going directly into the studs, if that'll work out better for you. Now obviously I had these bed rails laying around, which is why I used them. However, I did see the angle iron that is mounting my garage door opener might work in a similar fashion to the way that I use these bed frames. So keep that in mind while you're watching this video. And let's get to it.
So right here I'm just removing all of the legs and other bracketry that was on the main pieces of angle iron that was the bed frame. I did this using a grinder and a hammer. I also cut off the ends where a headboard would attach, so I just basically had a piece of angle iron with no other bracketry on it.
Using a 1/2-inch drill in my drill press, I drilled the holes that I would use to attach the ratchet straps to hold the kayaks. One thing I will say about these bed frame rails is they are made out of garbage metal, so it's a good idea to use some type of a coolant to keep the drill bit cool and run lower speeds on your drill for the same reason. I did neither of these things and I burned up a perfectly good drill bit drilling these holes.
Using my density stud finder, I located the studs in the roof of my garage and marked those out. Then I pre-drilled the holes with a small drill bit because I was using a decent sized lag screw to hold these in.
I measured out the first hole that I needed for the lag screw and the angle iron and pre-drilled that one on the drill press. Then I anchored that one in place, then marked out my next stud that I was going to use and then pre-drilled and anchored that one in place. I anchored the first 2 bed rails in place, then went ahead and tried it with one of my kayaks. When storing kayaks using ratchet straps like this, there is a couple things you need to pay attention to. One is that it doesn't slip off one side of the kayak or the other when you're pulling it up into place. And the other is to make sure you don't run out of slack in your ratchet strap and have it start binding up. The first problem is easily rectified by just going up with small increments on each side so it doesn't get too off balance. You might also just have to pull that ratchet strap back under the kayak every once in a while so it does not slip off the side. For the most part, when lifting it up, I just lift up on the kayak and then pull the slack out with the other side of the strap until I am right at the top, so all I have to do is ratchet that last little bit, which prevents the ratchet strap from getting overloaded with the strap material and binding up. After getting that one kayak up in place, then I went ahead and went all the way to the other side next to the light and anchored that piece of angle iron and then split the difference with that last piece of angle iron and anchored those in the same manner that I showed you the first one. And that's about all there is to it, guys. Now, because I am so backed up in editing my videos, meaning I've got a lot more projects going than I do have time to edit these YouTube videos, they have been up hanging from these bed rails for about a year and they have come up and down a couple times. And I haven't had any issues with the way I've done this. The actual 2 other kayaks that I have anchored with the 2-inch straps have been stored that way for multiple years and never had a problem with any type of oil canning or any damage to the kayaks whatsoever. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information and ideas on the way you might be able to store your kayaks. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you guys the most information in the least amount of time as possible so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.